Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida. What's the campaign strategy at this point?
Maintain our lead. We're up. We're up in Ohio by various points. We're up in Florida, and I'm not even cherry picking a Florida poll. Real Clear Politics average of the polls in Florida shows Mr. Trump ahead by a point. He's there again today, so we want to maintain that lead in the swing states. North Carolina, we're up by 7 in the latest numbers I saw this morning. So I think the race, it's tightened, but I feel confident in saying we're in the lead. The ABC poll, we're up by 1. Even the Rasmussen one, we're tied. It's a dead heat, some might say. I say we're in the lead, and we just have to maintain that for the next 6 days.
I want to ask you about some reporting our Major Garrett did in speaking to people within the campaign about the hidden Trump vote, the math that gets the campaign to see it thusly. 2.3%, they believe, the silent majority, voters who will be coming out of the woodwork, perhaps a nod to the Brexit vote in months past. 1% reluctant GOP voters finally saying, at least come Tuesday, fine, I'm going to go with Donald Trump. And then another 1% they point to the mystical vote, the let's be on the right side of history and vote for a winner. That suggests 5 points, and it suggests that in states where there's a 2 to 3 point margin either way, that Donald Trump might be significantly ahead in states where we don't see it. Is it math that makes sense to you?
It's proof, even. I'll give you a perfect example of this. Leading up to when early voting began, we were down, according to polls, 4 points in Florida. I thought, okay, we're behind in Florida. What happens when the early voting results start coming out? We're actually up. So that's proof positive that there is a hidden Trump vote. We saw this in the primaries. For instance, the Latino vote in New York City. The polls saw that Trump would be destroyed by the Latino vote in New York City. Guess who went on to win the Latino vote in New York City in the GOP primary? Trump. So we have proof that there is that hidden Trump vote.
It will then have to be a very significant vote in a state he'll need to have, in Pennsylvania, where averages show Hillary Clinton up some 8 points in that state. How to turn that around, again, a state that Donald Trump will need to get to 270.
I think the message about jobs, the economy, trade is huge in Pennsylvania with blue-collar workers there. Obamacare is obviously a huge issue throughout the country, including in Pennsylvania. In some places like Arizona, we've seen over 100% increase in policy premiums. That's something that touches you wherever, whatever state you're on. Very much so in Pennsylvania, but mostly the jobs and the economy issue for the blue-collar workers that have been forgotten by Hillary Clinton.
We've seen over 20 million votes cast already. It's roughly 23% of the total number cast in 2012. I mentioned undecided voters, perhaps, as both candidates make their final pitches here these last 6 days. How many undecided voters does the Trump campaign believe there still are?
You know, it's anyone's guess. It'd be hard for me to say, but I will tell you we firmly believe those undecided voters has just emerged with these emails ending up 650,000 on Anthony Weiner's laptop. I cannot imagine any undecided voter saying, I've been undecided this whole time, but I'm going to break for Hillary Clinton.
What did you make of the decision by the director, the FBI director, to send a letter that many and we've seen it by a bipartisan response, that perhaps there was not enough information put on the table, and that perhaps Democrats are saying very strenuously that he put his thumb on the scale here?
I find it ridiculous that this is someone they were praising only weeks ago, now to suddenly turn on him. Director Comey did absolutely do the right thing here. And as for Democrats saying, well, this is unprecedented, you've heard that throughout the news segments all week. It's unprecedented for him to do this. There's a long-standing tradition of not intervening in an election. First of all, he's not intervening in an election. He's carrying out an investigation he has an obligation to carry out. But second, this has happened. This happened in 1992 with the DOJ and a man named Lawrence Walsh, who pulled a very late surprise on Herbert Walker Bush. And it did help, by the way, Bill Clinton. So this has happened before, because investigations are investigations and justice has no timeline.
But he had no obligation. He only had that obligation because he had testified before Congress and said, I will keep you.
Right, so he created his own obligation, and even if he hadn't said that.
But there are a lot of people who would say he created his own problem with that. That
no,
there was no obligation here.
Absolutely, there's an obligation to keep Congress informed and the American public informed about this investigation that goes to the heart of national security and a presidential candidate.
Then I wonder why in the summer, the New York Times is reporting today that on two fronts, both an investigation into former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort's alleged dealings in Ukraine, and with regard to Hillary Clinton's relationships with Clinton Foundation donors. The DOJ requested of the FBI, and the FBI acquiesced to not subpoena in either case and to put nothing out there publicly because of a belief that it could materially impact the election. It would seem to break with that precedent set just weeks ago.
That's one person who's an unnamed source who apparently said that to a reporter. A former FBI official claimed that other FBI officials have also spoken to reporters and said that's wrong. The reason they didn't move on that is because Comey and other staff members didn't want to tip off whoever it may be that was the security risk or the security issue. So it was a logical and correct position to take because it would impede the investigation's success to kind of tip them off that we were on to them, is what this former FBI official told the reporter.
Should more information be put on the table, considering very specifically that the letter was sent before a warrant had been obtained, before anybody at the FBI could officially comment or have reason to know what was in the emails of which we discuss?
No, listen, he said, I will update you about having more information. This information came out, by the way, it came out weeks ago. So I'm actually wondering why Comey didn't talk about this a few weeks ago. He actually did wait quite a long time, I would say almost to the last minute, to release it. It's a matter of the American public having a right to know this. And the investigation is ongoing. He said he would update us if there was more information. Information came out. He had an obligation to do so. He's doing the right thing, taking a lot of heat for it, but I don't think he had any other choice.
Polling seems to still be unsure, perhaps, of what impact this might have had. What impact do you think it's had?
I think when you see Hillary Clinton's numbers dropping where she's now, I think the current ABC poll shows she's not as trustworthy or as honest, the American public finds, as Donald Trump. This really goes to the heart of Hillary Clinton's problem, which has always been transparency, corruption, and really a crooked career for decades, going back to the Clinton Foundation, her husband and Mark Rich's pardon. The list goes on and on. So this just goes to the heart of who Hillary Clinton is and why we can't have her in the Oval Office. First and foremost, if she can't handle classified info, if it ends up on Anthony Weiner's laptop, you cannot handle it at the highest levels.
With regard, however, to transparency, I know it's a question you've received often regarding Donald Trump's tax returns. Yeah, which can show obviously many things: with whom he does business, his tax rate, his charitable giving. A new piece in the New York Times reports that the candidate now potentially escaped paying tens of millions in income taxes, and I want to quote from it. Newly obtained documents show that in the early 1990s, as he scrambled to stave off financial ruin, Mr. Trump avoided reporting hundreds of millions of dollars in taxable income by using a tax avoidance maneuver so legally dubious. His own lawyers advised him that the IRS would most likely declare it improper if he were audited, end quote. That is yet another question as to his personal financial dealings, questions that could all be answered if he did not break with modern American precedent and release his taxes.
But he didn't break with precedent because other candidates haven't been under audit when they were asked to release.
Which you obviously, which you know has nothing to do with whether
actually, I disagree.
That's a choice that he can make.
No, technically he can release them. Is it a good idea? As a lawyer, I would tell him, no, you do not release when you're under audit. And as I always say, the only tax returns that matter, listen, he did nothing illegal in his tax returns. Even that, at the end of the day, that report, is there anything illegal done? No. So it's a non-story. The only tax return that matters is my own, and those are the people I care about. Who's going to make my tax return better? Who's going to bring back jobs to America, keep jobs here, increase our income, lower our Obamacare premiums, do away with Obamacare?
But we have questions of a person who would aspire to the highest office in the land. Questions that his tax returns can materially answer. I understand. I'm interested in my tax return too, but it stands to reason, especially if you're going to make transparency an issue, that goes both ways. No. Right,
and he's under audit. Blame the IRS for not being able to release. They shouldn't have audited him. They audited him. Then his hands are tied.
But the IRS has made it clear that he can release his tax returns.
It's disingenuous to say. It's very disingenuous for the IRS to say we're auditing you, but sure, technically you can release them.
But they're
technically,
his
I can do a lot of things. Whether it's a valid idea, good idea.
He could release the returns that aren't under audit.
They're all intertwined, though. We know that. Come on.
All right. Around the track we go, I suppose. 6 days remain. AJ Delgado, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anytime.